ChatGPT, Google's Bard, and other generative AI tools are already changing the workplace. But what does it mean for the life sciences, and what does it specifically mean for us in the quality and regulatory professions? To answer this question and more, we welcome Eric Henry, Senior Quality System and Compliance Advisor at the law firm King Spaling, and Shweta Manor, Global Director for Healthcare and Life Sciences at Google. She's going to be joining us remotely. Eric's a Senior Quality Systems and Compliance Advisor in the FDA and Life Sciences practice of his firm. In this role, Eric advises King & Spalding client staff, management, and boards on a variety of regulatory compliance matters. He's an industry veteran with over 33 years leading and coaching global organizations through quality and compliance challenges. Shweta is the global strategy and market leader for life sciences at Google Cloud. She leverages broad Google solutions and cross-alphabet relationships with industry-specific products. She brings extensive operating experience spanning digital health and technology, pharmaceutical, medical device, and biotech. Prior to joining Google, she led market growth strategies relevant to technology accelerators for therapies and diagnostics at Genentech. Thank you both for joining us. We are very excited to continue this conversation. AI is a very hot topic right now, and we're going to go ahead and get started with some discussion. I'll be moderating today. Discussion around some uses for generative AI. And I think, Shweta, do we have you on with us?
I am here.
Welcome, welcome. I'm so glad to see you. So I wanted to kind of start in your ballpark as we begin the discussion today. I know Google's AI tech is very advanced already, especially as it relates to some kind of standard testing techniques, the MCAT and other stuff. Can you tell us a little bit more about what AI tools are able to do today? What are the things that we can expect out of them? You know, what are some of the pitfalls? Where are we going?
Thank you for asking that question. I could probably spend a whole entire hour talking about that. So I will summarize, and we can go into details as we have time later on. So from a Google perspective, we firmly believe that AI is the most profound technology that humanity is working on today. It's a huge technological shift. And whenever these technological shifts happen, companies like Google embrace them as opportunities to reimagine how we can help people. So if you can just bear with me for a second, right? First, we had the internet, right, which brought people online. And then you see, again, companies like Google, they're the engine that connected people to the internet. And then you see the world moving to mobile. Then, Google helps these organizations, surface the right information at the right time. Meaning, if I'm going to search for a COVID-19 vaccine where I'm sitting and you search for a COVID-19 vaccine, likely our search results on Google are going to be a little bit different because they are going to be based on where you are and other information that you can extrapolate based on your location and other external public factors. Now we've got AI, which is like the third revolution. And this is now where we are building these powerful AI engines and tools to help the healthcare and life science industry in their next phase, right? I mean, all industries, but here I'm talking about from a life science and healthcare perspective. And so I really do believe that generative AI is going to have a massive impact on these industries. And as I've been listening to other conversations that we're having here, there's a lot of discussion, right, about what is the application, where does it start and end, about what could the impact can be. And so maybe if I can just level set a little bit around when we're particularly about generative AI, everybody wants to talk about it. I don't know if we have taken the time to all maybe really understand what that actually means. And so if you don't mind, I'm going to just take a minute to just talk about how, what are large language models?
Please take us there.
Those are, thank you. So those are machine learning algorithms that can recognize, they can predict, and they can generate human languages. And these large language models are pre-trained on like a petabyte scale text-based data set. So these result in these large models, tens to hundreds of billions of parameters. And they're usually trained LLMs, or large language models, they're usually pre-trained on a large corpus of text, and then they are fine-tuned. And so imagine if I were to give an algorithm a huge stack of books and say, ingest all this information. It ingests all this information and all these books, goes through every word, every page, and then you ask, what is a cat? And the response is, a cat is a small domesticated carnivorous mammal. This is what a large language model can do, right? Taking a corpus of data, being able to respond in a mechanism that responds back in text human language. And so why are large language models so different? It's because they're characterized by a lot of emergent abilities to perform different tasks, and also the contextual understanding. If you're asking what is a cat, that can be answered in many different ways. It's answering in the way that is contextualized to the human language and how we interact. And LLMs can actually continue to change how you interact with these systems. So as you put more information and as you ask different questions, it will continue to evolve and provide slightly different responses or slightly updated responses, because LLMs can find patterns and connections in massive amounts of data. So this is, okay, so if you think about these are what LLMs can do, it really does, these tools can now be really meaningful in a healthcare and life science context. This is why we all need to care about this, because it's not going to replace, it's not going to replace people. I don't think it will be absolutely, it will not change, it will not change the end outcomes. What these tools are meant to do are meant to provide efficiencies and cost savings so that you can actually have your people focus on these highly skilled workers on less manual tasks. So let me stop there, because I think there was a few parts to your question, but this is a little bit about how we're looking at generative AI and large language models and finding the use cases that aren't going to be around the next drug discovery, but maybe, which is, I think, something that is realistic to have. We are seeing companies already generating and claiming that to have completely generated new drugs using generative AI. However, there are going to be many other use cases that we're seeing that are going to be around the operational efficiencies. I think I heard earlier people talk about using this for document generation. That's a huge one. It's been proven already for clinical study reports and new drug applications. The human errors and the generative AI errors are vastly, vastly different. So it's on the right path. It's on the right path where you can remove a lot of these errors from copy and paste, et cetera. So I'll pause there.
Yeah, I'll actually comment on something Shweta said with a quote from Jesse Ehrenfeld, who is the president of the AMA. In a presentation or a fireside chat I did with him last year, he said, at least for physicians, and I know we can kind of extrapolate this to other roles, he doesn't see AI tools replacing physicians, but he sees physicians that make effective use of AI tools replacing those physicians that don't. And that really, I think, is where, when we think of what does it replace and what does it not. And in fact, the AMA has replaced the word artificial in AI with the word augmented, and they try to really perpetuate the view of augmented intelligence, working with the physician as opposed to artificial.
I do think that kind of gets at some of where AI is currently. Shweta, you've talked about maybe some of the low-hanging fruit, the things that are maybe more tedious manual processes that could be done effectively by these artificial intelligence or augmented intelligence tools. What are some of the things that you're seeing right now that are capably being accomplished by your own tools or others?
So this is there's a handful of areas where I think that this type of AI will be helping to augment, great terminology, right? Helping to augment workflows. So you're going to see, and we are seeing applications in research and development by helping researchers. They're identifying, testing potential drug candidates using computer simulations. This has already become commonplace over the last several years and is just now it is now just exponentially being able to, the amount of data that it can ingest as well as to be able to run is just exponentially higher. And so running these computer simulations, aggregating populations needed for a study, creating synthetic data, predicting these adverse events. So we're seeing a lot of use cases in this particular area. Accelerating discovery and being able to use large language models, LLMs, in order to mine large troves of research data to make connections between molecules and proteins, genes, conditions. And so these are some of the use cases that we're seeing. But if you take it outside of that piece, I'm also seeing a lot of use cases around patient and consumer engagement by enhancing chatbots to interact with more general health questions, first line triage, chronic condition management. As I was listening into the prior panel, there's a comment around, having the risk of losing a patient in a clinical trial, and historically we do have humans reach out, right? But now we are seeing, and I am seeing a premier hospital actually using a chatbot or an automated reach out of sorts in order to have the first level of interactions and trying to be able to triage. Shweta actually needs to be checked in by a human faster than than you do, because she really does look like she's going to fall off the clinical trial for A, B, and C reasons. Being able to pull that type of information and catch things sooner, another huge area of opportunity. And then the document generation piece, which we have talked about before today, around if it's about saving clinicians on written tasks, right? Writing emails, treatments, email chat responses, analytical tasks, which can be text or images, being able to triage things, an opportunity, triage images, for the radiologist to take, spend more time looking at, creating content for marketing. If you think about it from a traditional life science company, these are all these are all use cases where the common theme is it's addressing the systemic or the systems capacity constraints and trying to empower employees in order to be able to work on things of higher value and higher skill that's required of them.
Okay, let me dig a little bit deeper.
That was a long list.
No.
Sorry, go ahead.
Very good, Shweta. Thank you. Eric, I think you phrased something really interestingly when you said that AI is not coming for the doctor, but the doctor using AI might be coming for the other doctor, right? So maybe let's talk a little bit about the elephant in the room here. I think everybody is concerned potentially about like doomsday situations, but let's back off of that. We're not going to be discussing this with Elon Musk right now. I do want to press a little bit and ask, who is going to be able in the regulatory and quality professional world to use these tools effectively? How will those who use it effectively stay ahead of the curve, so that they're not the doctor that's left behind? What is that going to look like, and how do our jobs transform as we move forward? How do we stay alive?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and I think it boils down to a set of skills that a lot of people in the quality and regulatory field have, but maybe haven't dusted off in a while. And I'll frame that set of skills with a definition of AI that was given by a science fiction writer a while back in an interview with Financial Times, where he said that he defined AI as a poor choice of words in 1957, because it's neither intelligent nor does it learn. He views AI effectively as really applied statistics, and he said that should have been probably a better way to frame that technology, although it's not as sexy in terms of when you put it on a marketing brochure. That's really what it is. It's applied statistics. So I think to answer your question, it's a roundabout way of answering your question, which is to say that we all need to brush up those statistics skills and maybe get a little basic data science in our tool belt. If you're looking at the QMS applications of AI, things like complaint management and trending and analysis, clinical trial data analysis, doing 510K or submissions, looking for the right predicate devices for those submissions. These are all places where these tools can be very effective, but I think they require a little bit of sort of good savvy in terms of being able to pick up new technologies, which those of us that are getting older find a little more difficult every day. But they also, I think, just require an understanding of what you want out of the tool. And frankly, an understanding of some of the statistical methods that are used to generate what you want to know will help you use the tool better. So if I had to just say, what's the one skill you should pick up? See if you can find the old ratty, tore-up copy of your statistics book from college, and maybe do a little walk through that again and refresh yourself in that discipline, and that'll help you a lot.
Shweta, I want to get this back to you again. What are some benefits you see right now in terms of using this technology in the life sciences? How could a quality or regulatory professional specifically be applying this today? I think, Eric, you touched on some of that, but I'd like to see what our Google friend has to say.
Absolutely. So first, if you don't mind, I do want to maybe make a comment on the last question that you asked, Eric, because I really like the way, Eric, that you responded. But I think that there's also another aspect that I think you may agree with is it's also, AI is not replacing anything. There's no jobs that are going to be replaced as much as we're going to, again, triage things. But this is not something that's also going to happen overnight. We don't want to rush this process, particularly in this industry, right? If I were, a retail industry and I recommended Doritos to you over Cheetos in your grocery cart, okay, that's all right. But that's not how we can do this in our industry. And so, while people are getting very excited about applied statistics, AI, we need to make sure that we're taking the right steps to develop the technology, and we're being extremely methodical, secure, and transparent around it. And so, as slow and as time-consuming as that might be, I think it's really important to keep the human in the loop in every step of the process right now. So I did want to just call out that, yes, there's a level of, the education and dusting off some old books. I also firmly believe that as we have the new generation of clinicians and nurses and healthcare workers and anybody actually working in this industry, AI is continuing to be a bigger part. AI and technology is going to continue to be a bigger part of their education, because there are things that we're all learning now that is just going to be standard in 5 to 10 years from now, right? And so there's going to be that piece as well. But this is not something that is just, AI is replacing this. It is, humans going to have to be in the loop for quite a while. So I just wanted to add that piece before we talk a little bit more about how we're seeing AI being used right now.
Shweta, let me too kind of turn that phrase "human in the loop" on its head a little bit. I think we're early enough in the adoption curve that we could almost say that right now it's a human actor with the machine in the loop.
That's exactly right.
We're not really yet to the point where the machine is operating with a human in the loop. We really just have the machine in the loop of a human task. And I think for a while it'll probably be that way.
Mm-hmm.
I do agree. Absolutely. Absolutely. So with that, right, you're asking a little bit more around how we're seeing the use cases right now. And one of as I had made my comment earlier around, there's a lot of discussion about how we're going to have AI discovered new drugs and therapies to market. While all of these, I think, are going to be certainly a reality in our future, right now, some of the near-term and more realistic use cases are going to be the ones that are going to be lower hanging fruit, as well as I would consider reduced risk. And the reduced risk are going to be in opportunities where, while it might not be so exciting to talk about, or may not get you the clicks that you need on some sort of article, the real use cases that we're seeing are going to be around the driving operational efficiencies. And those use cases, those AI use cases, can be as simple as the chatbots to creating, to using publicly available information in order to do some sort of sentiment analysis to know that Dr. A is a little bit more aggressive with the way that this person prescribes versus Dr. B. There's a lot because Dr. A posts a lot of things, you know, in the external sphere versus Dr. B. There's a lot of those kind of opportunities and use cases, as well as just generally finding, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of document generation opportunities, which just require an enormous amount of manual labor. So while those use cases may not be extremely exciting, and you know, how is this going to transform the industry? From the role and the perspective that I have, we're seeing that is what all the top pharma companies are coming to Google to ask about, is like, how could we, you know, if we could shave off 20% of the time it takes to get a new drug application in or a CSR written for every single, it would just, you know, monumentally change in terms of a cost savings as well as time savings.
Thank you, Shweta. I want to turn a little bit, we've been talking about the use cases for generative AI. I want to turn our focus and our conversation toward what the regulatory state is right now, especially in the healthcare world around AI. And so, Eric, I'm going to turn a little bit more to you as our primary speaker on that. Can you tell us where we are currently with AI regulation and guidance, and give us a little bit of a hint of where we're going to be going?
I can illustrate this if my slides are there in the back. I have two slides. If you will pull those up, and I promise just two. I'm not gonna. I won't go on a long tirade here. There it is. And hopefully you guys will be able to get this after. And if not, connect with me and I'll send these to you. But I have two slides. One is kind of the state in the U.S. and the other is where I see it in the EU right now. We've talked, Alex and the folks in the clinical study, I think Holly talked about the PCCP draft guidance. That's currently where we are with that. I will tell you that I'm on a collaborative AI global health initiative with the FDA Digital Health Center of Excellence right now. And we felt like we kind of led down the garden path with that draft guidance because we thought it would accommodate adaptive algorithms. But as Alex pointed out earlier and others have pointed out, we've yet to see adaptive algorithms cleared by the FDA. And in fact, the PCCP draft guidance, when it came out, made clear that every modification had to go through full design change and design controls, which means it's not learning and adapting and implementing that learning in the field. So they're all locked algorithms. But it's out there, and it will reduce the number of submissions you have to make, but it will not address some of the needs of an adaptive algorithm. We have the new pre-market guidance from FDA for software. We have the clinical decision support software guidance that we are expecting significant, in the near future, I think, legal challenges to the FDA's statutory authority to draw the line where it did in clinical decision support that they would classify as a medical device. There's a couple of criteria there that the FDA said that you had to meet that I don't think that many lawyers think the statute does not allow. We did have a warning letter a couple of weeks ago. We thought possibly might be the first place that challenge might occur, but it looked like the company kind of rolled over and accepted the FDA's determination and fixed it from that standpoint. How many people are familiar with the ONC? Federal agency, the ONC. I see one hand. I hadn't heard of them either until about 2 or 3 years ago. It is the Office of the National Coordinator for Health IT. And I can tell you if Epic or Cerner were in this room, they'd raise their hands high. Because it is a quote, voluntary, and I mean quote in the quotiest sense of that word, voluntary certification program for systems that go for clinical decision support and health IT systems and electronic health records that go into hospitals. It's called voluntary, but CMS has basically said that if you don't certify using this scheme, they won't give you money. So it's not really voluntary anymore. It's 45 CFR Part 170. So for those of us that are used to saying 21 CFR dot something, 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 now you have to learn a new term, 45 CFR Parts 170 and 171. They have a proposed rule out in there. This rule's been out for a while, but a proposed rule has modified that to add some clinical decision support meat to it And they've also added an AI twist to it, but they don't call it AI. They call it predictive decision support interventions. And these systems, and what's going to be curious is where we have a clinical decision support system that has to be certified under the ONC scheme, but it also crosses the line because it's coming in from outside the hospital of being a medical device sold to the hospital and also requires FDA clearance. Now, I'm on calls with the ONC and the FDA every week. They say they collaborate on this proposed rule, but to me, if you really collaborated, you wouldn't call it predictive decision support interventions. You'd pick a name that's more aligned with what we know from the FDA. We also have another part of the regulation that we may not know of, which is from the FTC Act, the Federal Trade Commission Act, 16 CFR Part 464. The FTC is taking a much heavier hand in the regulation of AI. And they have a tool that is devastating in its impact if they decide to level it at your company and you're developing AI systems. And the tool is called algorithmic disgorgement. And what that means is they use their authorities under the idea of providing misleading information or misinformation to consumers. So a bad decision or a bad recommendation from an artificial intelligence or machine learning system can be viewed as providing misinformation to a consumer. And so the FTC would then use their authorities to pursue you, and if they feel it necessary, they will require you to delete the algorithm and all of its associated training and validation and other data that it may have collected. And to do so permanently. There's no comeback from that. And they have said that they are one of the primary regulators in the AI space in the United States. And so we have not seen them level their gaze at a life sciences company in a strong way yet, but it's coming. And when it does, we should just be prepared for what's going to happen there. I'll move through the rest a little bit quicker. We have their AI risk management framework from NIST. When it comes to governance, that's something we need to pay a little bit of attention to. This document that was mentioned a couple of times, the tripartite guiding principles for GMLP that came from FDA, Health Canada, MHRA. They also produced a PCCP one. I was hoping we'd get a little bit of a glimmer of adaptive algorithms in the PCCP guiding principles, but nope, they doubled down, going to require design controls for all modifications. There's the FDA's existing design control guidance from 1997, still applicable in the AI world today, as are standards like IEC 62304 from 2006, FDA's General Principles of Software Validation from 2002, all still out there, all still being used. We have the executive order that's been mentioned a couple of times. We may talk about that in a little bit more detail, but I will say just in passing, if you're a medical device company, just take a breath, because there's not a lot of impact from that executive order on your life. And frankly, it's our friends at places like Google and Apple and Facebook and other large companies that have multi-industry use or multi-industry capabilities in the AI world that have what are called dual-use foundation models that will have the most to be concerned about in terms of how the executive order will apply to them. There is a little bit more for pharma than there is for med device in there, but in essence, I think we're going to be not too subject to the things going on, other than getting more data. There's some more data that HHS has to generate out of that. What's coming? Final PCCP guidance. Jeff Shuren talked a little bit about that this morning. We are going to see some cybersecurity links to AI and machine learning in future FDA guidance. In fact, in the latest, in fact, that has now happened since I wrote this slide with the final pre-market cybersecurity guidance FDA just released. They did incorporate AI machine learning systems in the scope of that document. We will see the final rule from ONC, the adoption of different standards and guidances from AMI and IMDRF and others. I know, for instance, there's a bias paper that I co-wrote about 2 years ago that I know is popping up in some AMI and IEC circles and was footnoted in the ONC proposed rule. So they're pulling a lot of those white, and it's not just me, there's a lot of these white papers and thinking that's going into feeding a lot of this work. And we'll have the FTC continuing to do their work. We have state-level privacy legislation that's becoming more and more of a factor in how you operate state to state. And the DOJ is starting to really throw their weight around as well. I think that's what we can expect in the future. For the sake of time, I'll skip the EU one for now, other than just to say that we all are just really, really interested in what the final EU AI Act is going to look like. There are some things that have been added to the latest draft, I think, that make our lives a little bit easier. So we won't have to have 2 notified bodies doing the work for us. But the future is still very kind of murky, even more so in the EU than it is in the US. So I'll leave it to that, and we'll go on.
Yeah. Let's look a little bit to the future beyond what we've got here in terms of the guidance and standards. And this could be, Eric, for you and also for Shweta. How do you think generative AI is going to affect, we've talked about its effect on potentially regulatory quality professionals, the life science companies. How is it going to affect processes at the agency? Do you see any ways that the agency is adopting generative AI in what it's doing?
Well, I don't know about if they've adopted it yet. I know they're exploring some uses of it. I think the places that I see AI, and I'm going to use AI more broadly than just generative, although I think you'll see some generative AI at play in things like when they're trying to show substantial equivalence in the search for predicate devices and things of that nature. You'll see some things like that happen. I do see AI tools in use to help them do much more targeted prioritization of inspections and inspection schemes. I see them in recalls, being able to look at literature and social media and other publicly available sources to be able to understand much more quickly than they do right now through the limited number of databases and feeds that they have to determine if they should begin to contact manufacturers to talk about potential recalls. I see that now, those tools making that response time much faster. And I think, too, that during inspections, I think you'll see LLMs at use in the crafting of requests. And these will be based on not only large language models, and keep in mind, I was at a meeting in DC a couple of weeks ago on large language models for healthcare, and you're not going to see ChatGPT cleared as a medical device, right? And you're not going to see ChatGPT, other than just in some of the contexts I just talked about, at use in the FDA. But you will see large language models. The difference will be that the models are trained on more curated data that they know is more reliable, and also data that has access to sources that tools like ChatGPT and Bard don't currently have access to, particularly a lot of copyrighted standards and things of that nature, right?
Shweta, are companies like Google, like yours, are you working with other companies to develop large language models for implementation in their particular practice and focus?
And are you referencing in regulatory bodies or in the industry overall?
I think overall,
Yeah.
I don't think we necessarily need to know regulatory bodies specifically, but industry overall.
Yes, absolutely, right? Google is not going to be, we're not in the business of building or, making these things for the healthcare ecosystem. It is really, we're creating the tools, and we have the underlying infrastructure so that these tools can then be curated and customized and modeled for each of these companies that are trying to leverage these different tools, be that AI or for generative AI. I will maybe just also put a little side note. Part of the reason why I couldn't be there in person is because today was the day that we were spending some time with the FDA on helping, give our perspective on their point of view that the FDA is trying to understand about what is the impact of some of these type of technologies that are happening right now, and informing them what kind of guardrails that Google has in place, where we think where we're being much, very methodical, and where there's opportunities. And so it was a privilege, but also very pleased to see that these regulatory bodies are not, just shunning it, but really trying to take the time to understand where the opportunities are and how to be thinking about, what is going to be, near term and medium term and longer term. So it was fantastic to be able to help them think through what is going to be their point of view for generative AI and for some of these AI models coming forth. But generally, we see companies are absolutely trying to understand how to create these large language models, and we have the tools that we're helping them think through.
Great. I want to give a few minutes for audience questions. We've got a great panel here again, so if not, I have a couple questions that I've saved up, but does anyone have anything they'd like to ask of either Eric or Shweta?
That's really for you, Shweta, I think.
And sorry, I wasn't able to hear the question. Would you be able to repeat the question?
So I think he's what he's talking about, and is right now the only large language models that we're familiar with are those that are trained on the internet, right? The whole internet, most people. But large language models can be trained on curated data as well. And I think what he's asking is what does that look like? How is that possible? And can we do, what can it allow us to do if we're able to curate and bring that kind of into our own house, but use the same technology?
I'll give you a really good example, and I think that's where it becomes very powerful. It's when you can train these models on your own corpus of data. That's exactly why different healthcare and life science entities are coming and I'm having these conversations. I'll give you a really good use case. The best is within a lot of these research arms of pharma and medical research, they want to understand how to, if I'm going to look for molecule red on PubMed, how can I find molecule pink and magenta to show up as well, right? I'm oversimplifying, of course. That's fantastic if you can get some sort of contextualized search result based on what you're looking up for. But now, if they would like to train their own corpus of their own private data and contextualize that, now you can do that same kind of molecule red search in your own company. And then the idea would be to fine tune these models in such a way that you, sitting in your own company and your own organization, can do a search for molecule red and find things in the public corpus and contextualize that with your internal research. And I think these are the kind of use cases that we're seeing. Happy to talk more after or get connected. Feel free to reach out. But these are the type of use cases that we're seeing as companies are looking at how do we bring in these models for our own private corpus of information.
Take maybe one more question from the audience. Yeah, Alex.
Oh, not Alex. Sit down, Alex. Yeah, this one gets a little tricky. It's the question, Shweta, that Alex is asking, and Alex does the same thing I do, but at a competitor law firm, Hogan Lovells. He's talking about with supplier audits, and it's really more on the regulatory side, but basically, how do you audit your cloud provider, right? When you have all these things going on in the cloud. And so the good news is, there is some start of some regulatory literature in this respect, and man, I wish I could remember the name of it. It is an AMI consensus report. I want to say like 50, I can't remember the name, with the number of it. It's an AMI consensus report on the use of cloud-based technology in medical devices. Shweta, are you familiar with that? Do you know what the number is?
I do not, but I know.
Yeah, see, I can't remember either. But, and Pat Baird, who I think was on the committee to write that, he and I were talking just a couple of weeks ago. That will likely be moved from a consensus report to a technical report soon, and I think ISO is going to pick it up as well. When that happens, the way that they've basically done this is they've created a snapshot in time validation scheme for these systems. So first of all, from a validation point of view, you can do that as a snapshot in time because you can't control the changes that are made to the cloud provider. But in terms of supplier audits and supplier controls, purchasing controls, my own strategies have simply been to contact these companies, get whatever you can from them, and validate around that. You're not going to get a cloud provider like a Google, like an Amazon, like a Microsoft to go sit through an ISO 13485 style supplier audit. They're just not going to do it. Shweta would probably let you do that in her office, but most of her compatriots probably would not. So what we do is we'll send a questionnaire, that's a little bit more high level. That's what I typically promote, and try to keep up, do some snapshot in time validation of your system in that environment. And then there are some certifications and some test reports that those cloud providers often will provide. Sometimes it's around cybersecurity types of testing and types of certifications, other types of things. Make the call, go on the website, get what you can, show a good faith effort, put that in the supplier file for that supplier, and monitor them over time, and do that snapshot validation that AMI consensus report's calling for. That's about all you can do right now from a purchasing controls point of view. I think it'll be interesting, Shweta, if people like Google or Amazon begin to fashion cloud environments that are particular to life sciences. If they create platforms that provide some more guarantees, or not, if not guarantees, some more reassurances or confidence around issues that are important to life sciences companies, and would indeed be able to provide more granular purchasing controls information to those customers. So I don't know what the future holds, but that's about all we can do at this point.
I'll just maybe add one thing is there are we're now seeing that there's a myriad of organizations popping up. Some have been around for a while and I think are expanding their portfolio of being an auditor of cloud for life sciences, for example, right? We are all constantly, at least I can speak from the Google side, constantly, there's always these third-party audits that happen for a variety of reasons, from a variety of angles, not just from regulatory bodies like the ones that we're referencing in context of today's talk. But I would say I'm starting to see a myriad of organizations pop up that are auditing cloud specifically by industry these days, especially in the regulated environment.
All right, last 30-second question from me. What do we need to do in health AI broadly, as well as health AI specific companies? What do we need to do to make sure that we've developed trust with the public and with those who use the technologies?
In order to build trust, very quick answer is I'm going to say is that, again, needs to be part of our education system moving forward. You have to trust that this is not, we have to build trust into the data that's going in. It's these opportunities or these models are only going to be as good as the data that we put into them. So I think those are going to be, one is very tactical around the education piece, and the second is around building trust into the data that's going into these models is going to be part of trusting these models. And start slow and methodical.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll try to give a quick answer as well. I think transparency by the people that are developing these systems is important, and we got to know what we mean when we say transparency in terms of algorithm development, how the data is curated, where it comes from. I think also very quick response to post-market events that are adverse, right? I think if the public sees a company respond quickly and which means you got to do some good post-market monitoring of your systems to events that may have deviated from the intended use or the guardrails of that system. I think that's going to be hugely important. And finally, I will talk about bias and health equity. I think a focus on that and a clear, as part of your transparency model, showing that you're focused on that. And I think, to Shweta's point, educating people on what AI can and can't do and what it's good at and what it's bad at is important, especially when it comes to health equity and bias, because frankly, you will never get rid of, I know we had one, I think one of the previous panelists said, we need to get bias out of our algorithms. Never going to happen. There's no such thing. Bias will always be there. And in fact, depending on what data you use and where it comes from, it's quite likely that you'll have to inject intentional bias into the algorithm to effectively address the population that you want to address. The question, what you have to do is put a scheme together to effectively identify and mitigate bias that's unintended and show that you can do it quickly, both pre-market and post-market. And I think those are just things that help build trust.
All right. That wraps up our session. Thank you, Eric and Shweta. I think it was very enlightening. There's no doubt we all need to be well prepared. There's a lot on the cusp, a lot on the horizon, and it's exciting to be part of this. So, thank you.